right, everybody, we're back with another Ramp Careers Daily Update. Today, I am joined by both co-founders, Mitch and Manoj. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Danny.
We've made it. Another great week, and we're off to our topic of the day. The topic today is how to get started, how to ramp up when you're starting a new job, getting over those feelings of apprehension and not necessarily knowing exactly what to do. So let's dive in.
When you start your first job, I didn't know what I was doing for the first 2 years. I would just do some activities, but I was so afraid to ask way too many questions. I'd ask a question and I'd get an answer, and I'd maybe ask a follow-up question, I'll get another answer. I get a feeling that people are starting to get a little bit irritated, and then I go, yeah, that makes so much sense. And then I move on, but I didn't understand it at all. And I was afraid, man. I wore a dress shirt, I wore dress pants, I had a belt, I wore a pair of shoes. I was probably billed out at $100 an hour as, some young CPA, and I had no clue. I hate saying this out on camera, but I just didn't know anything for the whole year. You got work papers, a bunch of instructions, and I just sit there looking at things and trying to understand it. And I can't be the only person. I mean, you guys possibly couldn't have known what you were doing for the first year.
Everything. No, it was insane, man. I sat at my first, I'll talk about the sales role. The first sales role I had a Groupon. One, I was an unpaid sales intern. So I was fucking freaked because I just moved to Chicago and I was making $0. And I had put, I bought a lease or signed a lease on an apartment that was well above my budget. And it was a year-long lease. So I'm like sitting there freaked out, and I'm in sales, and I went to college for finance. I had no clue what I was doing. So legitimately what I did for the first like days on the job until I picked it up was I sat next to two people, and I would look at like legit the motion that they were doing, the clicks on their computer. And I would sit by them, and I'm sure it was super annoying. And I'm like, tell me what you are doing right now, like line by line. Why are you entering this into Salesforce? What are you doing when you pick up the phone? What are you saying? It was probably my first 2 weeks on the job of just sitting by. At that point, I didn't know who was the best performing salespeople or not. I was just sitting by random folks, some of which ended up being awesome salespeople. Some were totally great too, but just not the top of the class. And I just would write down every step and then do that step on my own until I found my own voice, and then until I realized, okay, it was a numbers game. There's a reason that there were the same 5 people at the top of the call charts every week. We had weekly reports. We didn't have like daily automated Salesforce reports at the time. There's a reason why those people were also tops of the leaderboards in terms of revenue in. And I just did the same thing, made 100 calls, tried to beat the top person by 20 calls a week, by 20 calls a day for like the first 6 months until I felt confident with my own ability.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a first job thing though, necessarily, right? Like you move into any new role, you immediately feel uncomfortable, and there's a huge hurdle of, maybe it's technical knowledge that you're lacking, maybe it's actual practical, like hands-on knowledge like Danny's talking about. There's always a gap, right? If you're pushing yourself and kind of going out of your comfort zone, which inevitably most overachievers are doing. How do you reconcile that, right? Because you don't want to feel like the guy that's like sitting there bugging people, and you don't want to look like an idiot because then people question, oh, why did I hire you? Like these are the thoughts that are going through your head. Maybe they're all
But here's the thing though. I think that they're and I could be wrong here, but love to kind of see what both of you think about this. Maybe there's a little bit of a bias when it comes to people that are explaining things to you. Hear me out. Let's say that you're a VP of sales, and there's 2 sets of people that come and ask you the same question. One is someone out of college, and then another person is another VP of sales, and they're asking you the same question. If the person out of college doesn't understand it after you explain it to them the second time or the third time, would you, as the person that's explaining, have the same reaction as the VP of sales who also doesn't understand it after you explain it the second or third time? I almost feel like if the person that's seasoned keeps asking you a question, you might ask yourself, man, am I doing a crap job explaining it to him? Because you automatically treat them differently as opposed to someone that's kind of young, fresh out of college, asking you the question 3 or 4 times, and you might feel like, is this kid an idiot? I don't know. I'm not sure. The other reason I bring this up is because I am a lot more confident today to ask people repeatedly until I understand it than I was 10 years ago. And in my own mind, it took me 10 years to get to a point where I'm comfortable asking people 4 or 5 questions. I don't know if I am less worried that they think that I'm a fool. And maybe when I was younger, I was a little bit more worried and I didn't want people to think I'm a fool. And 10 years have passed and I've just come to realize I am a fool. And it just, sometimes some things I get quickly, some things I don't. But I wonder, do you guys feel the same way or no?
Yeah, sure. I definitely feel the same way, right? But I think part of it is behind every answer, there's typically a foundational level of information that they're expecting you to know. And that's where you run into issues is if you don't know the 3-4 levels deeper, sometimes it's hard to understand what the answer actually means. You may intuitively say, yeah, that makes sense, but you don't know the why behind it. So either you keep messing it up or you don't understand like variations of the situation, and then you run into issues. So I think it's the confidence in saying, okay, that makes sense, but why is that so? Like dig deeper into the whatever answer you get, so that you can start to understand the layers behind it. I think that's where I run into it a lot, especially when starting a new role and especially when learning some sort of technical piece of information I didn't know. I guess is your question people doing a shitty job explaining things, or is it that people just need to be more confident in asking why?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give some more tactical advice if someone wants to get better at asking questions. I think that is an art as well. Teasing an answer out of somebody else is an art, especially when they're trying to do their best job and you're simply not getting it. There's 2 ways of doing it, right? You can continue saying, I don't understand, but that's not helpful. What I've seen work, and I do this to this date, is if someone explains something to me and I don't get it, I'll like assess, have I gotten bits and pieces of it? And so if I did, I'll just give them some positive affirmation and say, this is what I've understood. Here is what doesn't make sense for me. That helps. Another thing that helps is context. People learn differently. I learn through associations and analogies. That's simply how things stick in my mind. And so I walk people through my thought process. So if someone explains something to me, and I understand something, I'll say, this is what I understand, and here's why. Here's the piece that I don't understand. Is this analogy a good way of thinking about it? Or here's another parallel. Can I tie this to what you're saying? It gives them a little more of a frame of reference. And so I think as someone that's starting a new job, if you don't understand something, what you can control is how you tease out information from somebody else. Just don't sit there and say, I get it or I don't get it. It's not that binary. Give them some rope. Tell them what you don't understand. Tell them what you don't understand. Draw some parallels. I think that way people will help you better because no one can read your mind.
It also maybe helps you internally so that you don't feel like you're coming off as, a dummy, because now you're demonstrating that, okay, I'm understanding what you're telling me on the fly, but there's still gaps.
What's crazy about that is it actually may help the person teaching you or helping you understand a little bit more too, because what they get out of it is they get to clarify their thoughts in their mind. They also understand now and get put into a mentorship role and can start to think through the way that they explain things going forward. So that's more crystallized, at least somebody who will take the initiative and is thoughtful about the way they teach and lead other folks should pick up on something like that.
Yeah. And I mean, the last piece of tactical advice, Mitch, and, tell me if you've seen this, because I think you were the recipient of a lot of this type of knowledge sharing. Ask a question to someone and they're unable to explain it to you in plain English in a way that a 5th grader can understand it. They probably don't have enough of a command over it. And that's okay. It's all right if someone doesn't know everything. You just go ask another person. I think sometimes people automatically assume that you're an SDR or a BDR, that your SDR manager will have answers to all the questions, right? Maybe they don't really understand the ins and outs of the product. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. If you're not able to get a straight, plain English answer, and you've tried everything else that we've talked about, it's okay to go ask the question to somebody else instead of just giving up and saying, I don't understand, I'm going to pretend like I do. That's another pet peeve that I have. And this is just coming from my years of being a tutor. Sometimes I find myself talking around in circles and I'm like, all right, the reality is I don't think I have a firm grip of the matter. And so I'm going to go back and see if I can explain this in plain English, right? And as we're thinking about building our own content, our own curriculum, that's a question that we ask ourselves, right? Is, can someone that has no background in this understand it? Is it digestible? Can I cut out all the buzzwords, all the nonsense, and explain this in simple words? And so that's another piece of advice, just to round it off, is ask a few people and see what sticks.
Yeah, that's so true, right? The test for me is always, can I explain this concept without using a single insider industry term, right? And when I started selling integration software, that whole world was so brand new to me that was my biggest gripe. Is every person I talked to, they could only explain it by using industry terms. And it took me, probably not kidding, maybe 12 months before I felt comfortable actually selling it to a CIO. And I think that's an issue for both parties, but I think it's something that the teacher needs to work on as well, right? Breaking down a concept.
Yeah, it's funny they bring that up. I'm having flashbacks now to the first startup I joined out in Silicon Valley, which was Order Ahead, a very simple, ordering application. It's like DoorDash without delivery. So you go, you put your order in and you pick up your food item on the go. And when I explained it to my grandmother, I'm moving out to San Francisco and I'm going to work at an ordering application, an ordering app. She was like, what is a food ordering app? And that kind of sparked something in me. I was like, if I can't explain what I'm doing to my grandma, who, by all means isn't all that tech savvy, I think I'm doing it wrong. It's not on her to understand it. It should be plain English, like what this application does for ease of use, both with your prospect and also for yourself. So that's become my litmus test, is whenever I join a new company, wherever I'm doing a new idea, I need to be able to explain it to my grandma in plain English in order for me to feel satisfied with, like, this is actually the right way to be selling it, or the right way to be positioning my product.
Sidebar, Danny, it's funny because Order Ahead is probably a terrible idea, but I think the simplest way to describe it is it's DoorDash without delivery. I think that sums it up.
I know.
It's Uber, except you won't get your food. So everything else but that.
Isn't it just takeout? Isn't it just takeout? Like, that's all it is, right?
It's just pickup, not delivery.
Just pick up, not delivery.
Just pick up.
So, all right. So to summarize the practical tips here, Manoj rallied off a couple. I think the big takeaway is, look, everybody struggles with this, right? Like, you're not alone if you think that you're not smart enough, you don't know the heck's going on, you're confused daily about your new job, your new role. Everybody struggles with this issue. There's definitely some realness to fake it till you make it, right? Like, part of it is just showing up. Manoj, you're saying show up, do your job, put your head down, copy what everyone's doing around you. It'll start to click. But it sounds like, practically speaking, you can talk to as many people as possible. Don't be afraid to dig in and ask the why behind it, or go a couple levels deeper until it does start to click. I think study the industry vocabulary as much as you can. Or part of it is just the huge issue of knowing the terms and what they mean, right? You may understand the concepts behind the scenes, but you're just not familiar with the vocab. That's what you can do as a student, I guess, as somebody trying to learn. And then if you're the teacher and if someone comes to you for advice, try to break it down practically. Use simple words that your grandmother could understand, that Danny's grandmother could understand, and avoid using the jargon in there. And then test the person you're teaching along the way. Test them on concepts. I found that always works well, right? You explain something, you say, okay, great. Tell me that again. Like, make sure that they understood it before you go and give them the 10-minute spiel about whatever you're trying to teach.
Yeah, and the general rule of thumb is, I think that the significant majority of people, if not everybody, has the ability to learn anything. Some people may take a little bit longer than others, and some people may learn differently. But I hope, man, I wish someone told me that I'm not stupid or slow, or I don't know why I had such a high bar for myself. It's just unreasonable. Like these days, I have a very low bar for myself. I'm like, I'm going to learn when I learn. Keep asking the questions, but most things don't click right away. It takes a little bit longer. And I think, that's my piece of advice for anyone that's starting out their careers. You're not stupid. You're not slow. Things will just take a while to understand. Keep asking the questions and don't worry about what people think of you. It doesn't matter. And if they have a bad perception of you, that's on them. They're just shit at teaching.
Great advice. Good point to wrap on too. So we'll usher you off to the weekend in style for Manoj, Mitch. This is Danny with another Ramp Careers Daily Update. Thanks, everybody.